where you've been, what you've done, and what you have done to you. You are the part of the journey that God knew you were going to. Today, I want to talk to you about this concept that we're no longer a slave to fear, because we live in a world today in which everywhere you look, every time you turn on the news, everything is about fear. It's about drumming up fear. It's captivating you with fear, and it's capitalizing on your fear. And the news networks are capitalizing on your fear, and they're creating fear. And everywhere you look on Facebook, there's another thing that people are sharing on Facebook with articles saying, oh, don't do this, be careful of that. And pretty soon now, here we live, we wake up, and you go out of your house in the morning, and you're literally afraid to do anything. You're afraid to eat, right? Here in Maui, you're afraid to go to certain restaurants. Why? Because they might be using local produce, and they might not have washed that local produce correctly. So you might end up with rat lung disease, right? So we're afraid. We are so fearful of so many things. We're fearful. I remember the election last year, and no matter which side you were voting for, hell was going to freeze over. And you either have people telling you that if Trump gets elected, he's the Antichrist, and we're all going to die, or if Hillary Clinton got elected, she was the Antichrist, and we're all going to die. But I don't know about you, but I serve a God who is bigger than the fears and the imaginations of this world. And it really doesn't matter who is the president of the United States. What matters is who's the king on the throne. And the king on the throne, who was not placed there by election, he wasn't placed there by vote, he wasn't placed there by popularity, he wasn't placed there by policy and procedure, he wasn't placed there because he was a great speaker or a great campaigner, but he is there singularly because he is the only one worthy to stand on the throne, to sit there and rule the universe because he created it, is God. And as long as God is there, it doesn't matter what happens in this world. I do not have to live a slave to fear any longer because I am a child of God. I want you to turn in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 7. I just want to tell you I love you, God's house. And I'll tell you why I love you. Today, I didn't feel like dressing up. I just didn't. Like nothing in me wanted to dress up. I woke up this morning. I sat up in my bed and I felt like electricity, and I said, man, anything can happen today. So if I'm going to talk about how I'm no longer a slave to fear, then I'm just not going to dress like I'm worried about what anybody thinks about me. And let me tell you, I get Facebook messages on a constant basis telling me a million things that I'm not good enough to do. And a lot of it has to do with the way that I dress. So you don't dress like a pastor. But I love you guys because I know I can just come in and just get ready to throw down. I feel like busting the devil upside his head this morning. I know that's not like normal preacher speak, but whatever, I don't care. I just feel like busting the devil upside his head. And so I felt like a little militant today. So I just was like, I'm going to dress up like I'm going to go beat up the devil. And after 9 o'clock this morning, we done beat up the devil. But I'm not ready to rest on that. I'm ready to beat up the devil in your lives too. Amen? How many of you are just tired of taking it? You're tired of people telling you how God has just defeated the enemy, but you feel defeated in your life? How many of you are ready to be the victor, not the victim? Somebody here today, you're about to become the victor, not the victim. In the next 30 minutes, you are about to become the victor in your life, standing with Jesus in heavenly places instead of being the victim. God is about to shift your perspective. Break you free from the jail cell of your limitations. If you are at Romans chapter 7, I want you to say, all right. Romans chapter 7. It's okay if you don't have it. We live in the 21st century. We got things called screens, and we'll put it up there for you. I'm reading out the New Living Translation because I like to preach out of Bibles that people can understand. So, Romans chapter 7, starting at verse 14. Paul's talking here. Paul's the greatest theologian of all time. So the trouble is not with the law. He's talking about the human condition. So the trouble is not with the law, for it is spiritual and good. The trouble is with Say that again. The trouble is with, for I am far too human. How many of you can relate to Paul right now? A slave to sin. I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. But if I know that what I am doing is wrong, this shows me that I agree that the law is good. What that means is, if I look and I say, I know deep down inside, even though I'm doing it, even though I don't feel like I can resist this temptation, I know that it's wrong, I don't want to do it. That means that somewhere deep down inside, I understand that what is truly good is actually good. So I am not the one doing wrong. It is the sin living in me. When you find yourself doing things that everything inside of you wants to do, but there's something also on the inside of you that says, I don't want to do it, that's even deeper than that temptation and that desire, that means it's not you that wants to do it, it's the sin in you. And that's the human condition. That's the problem with humanity, is that we want, deep down inside, we want God in our lives. We want to serve God. I meet people every day that say, I want to serve God. There are people who walk into this church and say, I want to serve God, but they don't. Why? It's not because they don't want to. It's not because they're evil. It's because they're enslaved. And just like a slave, it's not what you want to do or don't want to do that determines how you live. It's what you're enslaved to that tells you what to do and what you can't do. And I know that nothing good lives in me. That is my sinful nature. I want to do what is right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. But if I do what I don't want to do, I'm not really the one doing wrong. It is the sin living in me that does it. And you're wondering why Paul keeps saying this. Paul keeps saying this because he wants to drive it home to you that you are not the wretched one, that you are not the broken one, that you are not the evil one, that you are not the decrepit one. It's the sin that lives in you. But you are not those things. You were created in the image of God. He loves you. You are not messed up. The sin in you is messed up. The brokenness of this world is messed up. The corruption this world brings is messed up. But you are unconditionally loved by God. See, if you can start to differentiate your condition from who you really are, then you'll actually start to believe the things that God says about you, because then you realize that your limitations are not you. I feel like I got to drive this one home. Because I think that there's somebody in here, or there's a few people in here this morning. You have equated your struggles and the desires of the flesh, the desires of the things of this world, your fears, your anxieties, your doubts, and you've equated it to you. In other words, the reason why you still live with these things, no matter how much you beg God to deliver you from them, is because part of God's way of delivering you from these ways of thinking is to bring truth into your life, because truth sets you free. And the truth is, you are not your sinful nature. So that's how Paul can say, it's not actually me who's living this way, it's my sin in me. Because if I can start to draw a differentiation between my sin nature and me, then I can actually believe that God can deliver me from those things. But as long as you believe that it's actually you, you'll never actually believe that God can deliver you from it. Because if God delivers you from it, you cease to be you. If God delivers me from alcoholism, but all I ever think I am is an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic and then my grandfather was an alcoholic and it's been passed down to me and everyone tells me that it's a disease that I'm going to live with forever. As long as you believe that you are an alcoholic and you identify with the alcoholism and that becomes your identity, you will never be able to gain freedom from that alcoholism because as long as you live, you will believe that that is you. But if God can get you to understand that the alcoholism is not you, it's not the way God created you, it's not the way He intended you to be, it's not the Spirit of God inside of you, and you can divorce yourself from the idea that I'm an alcoholic, but you can start to say that this alcoholism is a nature that's within me, that is not me, God can deliver you in a second. So verse 21, I have discovered this principle in life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. I love God's law with all my heart, but there is another power within me, and that is at war with my mind. How many of you are like, dude, Paul is talking to me right now? He is talking to me. Like, I love God with all my heart, but there is another power within me that is at war in my mind. I wake up every day, and I feel like I'm at war in between two natures. This power makes me a slave to the sin that is still within me. Now I want you to understand this. This is not Paul talking before he comes to know Jesus. This is Paul after he knows Jesus. He's saying, even though I know Jesus. See, before I knew Jesus, there was no war. I was just run by my flesh, by my sin nature. But now Jesus came into my life, and now the Spirit of Christ lives in me. Now there's a war going on. Now there's not just one side that I'm slave to. Now there's two sides, and I'm at a fork in the road. I got to choose every single day. And this power that's at war with the Spirit inside of me makes me a slave still. I am a slave to sin still, even though I want to serve God. Oh, what a miserable person I am. See, there's some folk that feel really miserable about yourself today. Who will free me from this life that is dominated by sin and death? But thank God. Everybody say, thank God. I love how you can have a perspective to thank God even in the middle of your question. And in Christianity, we teach you that if you got a question, then you're not living in faith. You're living in doubt, you're living in fear, and that's not of God. But the thing about faith is faith does not exist outside of doubt. Doubt is actually a necessary ingredient for faith. If you take doubt out of faith, you no longer have faith, you have belief. See, if I believe something, that means it's 100% true to me. But when you add doubt in there and you're no longer 100% certain, now in order for me to have a conviction about that thing, that requires faith. Faith does not occur in spite of doubt and fear. Faith exists because of doubt and fear. And I love that Paul's sitting here and he goes, in the midst of your question, in the midst of the war, in the midst of the slavery, in the midst of everywhere that you are, you can look and you can say, thank God. I truly believe that the greatest freedom that you will ever experience in life doesn't come as a result of great revelation. It comes as a result of great gratitude. The greatest freedom you will ever experience in your life, the greatest gains you will ever make, the greatest victories that will ever occur will not come because of a great revelation or another great prophetic word or a great service or a great church or whatever it is or a great counseling session. It will come as a result of great gratitude. So you see how it is. In my mind, I really want to obey God's law, but because of my sinful nature, I am a slave to sin. In this passage, over and over, he uses one word, desire. He keeps saying, I have a desire. There's a desire. And this desire keeps making me a slave. See, the thing about desire will always be an arrow pointing to who your master is. What you desire is truly your master. It's not what you say, it's who you follow. Because what you desire is what you'll chase after. What you're chasing after sets your direction. If what you're chasing after is to the west, you're going to go west. If what you're chasing after is in the east, you're going to go east. Wherever you're chasing, it is an indicator to you who your master is. And the thing about desire is desire throws off your ability to really discern what something is truly worth and whether or not it's worth chasing or not. For example, I have water up here. Now, this bottle of water, how much would you pay for this water? Stacey said it's $2. Let me get a volunteer up here. Who wants to volunteer for me? Jonah, you want to volunteer? Okay, come on up. Everybody give a hand to Jonah. All right, now Jonah, I'm going to give you something, but I'm going to need it back. All right, don't try to steal it from me. You're on camera now. We can see. This is $100 in 20s. Everybody's like, shoot, I should have volunteered. $100 in 20s. Now, wait. Look at this. I have my eye on you. Nathan's like, that's my son. That's my son. Now, say you walk into a convenience store. This is sitting in the cooler here. This nice bottle of Dasani, 20 ounce. And it's sitting there. How much would you pay for this? $2. That's about the normal cost, $2. How many of you agree? About $2 is what this bottle costs. Somewhere between $1 and $2. Yeah. Right? Okay, so now, say you walk into the convenience store and you see me standing there at the cooler and I do this. And you go, now how much would you pay for this bottle? Zero? Zero. Why? Don't you want this bottle? No, you wanted a bottle of water, right? But your desire level for this bottle went down. So because your desire for this bottle went down, all of a sudden it went from like, I would like some water. I'd be willing to pay $1 to $2 for it. Now all of a sudden you see me drink out of it. Now you don't desire that bottle. In fact, you're probably repulsed by this, right? And so now, based on your desire for this bottle of water, the worth went down. Same water, same bottle, but your desire went down. Now, say you go to a football game. I love to go to football games. When we lived on the mainland, we went to a lot of football games. Now, if you've ever been to any kind of stadium for a football game or baseball game and you walked over to the concession stand, you will understand that they don't pay you market value for anything. And the same bottle of water that is $1 to $2 in a convenience store now costs about $6. But you're really thirsty. And you can't go out to the convenience store because you're at the game. But you're really thirsty. It's a hot day and you are just so thirsty. And you see this bottle and it's $6. Now, would you pay for it? You're really thirsty. I didn't drink out of this one. Yeah, okay, you would. Say you walked up there and you come to the concession stand. So now the value has gone up for him. Would he pay $6 for this in the convenience store? No, he'd be like, you're crazy. You're ripping me off. But he gladly walks over in the stadium and he pays the $6. Now watch it. Now, say you walk to that concession stand and the attendant, thinking nobody's looking because there's nobody in line, he reaches into the cooler and he does this. And he comes up and he says, I want to buy some water. So he reaches over And the one that he just drank from, he pulls it out and he goes, here, $6. Would you pay for it? I just drank out of it. No, right? Why not? He doesn't want it. Would you ever buy water out of a bottle somebody drank it out of? Drink it? Right? No. How many of you would do that in the convenience store? Like, just take it, drink it. Arthur, you would? You would? Wow. Say now you're in a desert and you've been going for 3 days with no water. You are literally wasting away. You have no strength left. You are about to die. You are parched. And you are starving. And somebody comes up to you on his camel with a bottle of Dasani water, and he says, I'll give you this bottle, but I want all $100 for it. Would you give it to him? Yeah, wow, you didn't even think twice. In a convenience store, if somebody were to offer you a bottle of water for $100, you would say, that is insane and crazy. But in this circumstance, he didn't even think twice about it. He said, I would gladly pay every cent in my wallet. If you had $1,000 in your wallet and you were in that desert dying of thirst, and somebody says, I'll give you this for all the money in your wallet, would you give it to him? If you had $5,000 in your wallet and they said, I will give you this bottle of water for all the money in your wallet, would you give it? What happened? Even if I drank out, even if I rolled up and I was drinking out of it, and you said, I want water, I'm dying, I need water, and I said, I'll give you this water, but I want all the money in your wallet, what would you do? You would give it, right? What changed? Think about this. When it was worth $1, he wouldn't take it if I drank out of it. When it was worth $6, he wouldn't take it if I drank out of it. And that's only talking about $1 and $6. But all of a sudden, this bottle of water is priceless to him, and it doesn't matter how much I drank out of it, how gross it is. All of a sudden, his standards change. Why? Because the value changed. It became the most valuable thing. But in that moment, what is causing him to equate such value to this thing, even though, objectively speaking, it's not worth more than $1? Why all of a sudden is he willing to pay any price? Because in that moment, his desperation level is at an all-time high. Thanks, Jonah. I'll take my money back. I want my money back. Wait. Wow. Thank you, Jonah. See, desire causes you to value something more than what it's worth. And as long as your desires are fighting against you, you will always fight an uphill battle, because in your mind, you're going to know that you should serve God. But when you're in your mind, you're trying to give value to God, but your desires are pointing you in another direction. Wherever your desires are is always what you're going to find and deem more valuable to you than what you know and understand. And so many of us right now, we know and understand that we should serve God. But Sunday morning rolls around, and you get up in the morning, and after a hard day's work, you don't feel like getting up to go to church. And in that moment, what you know comes into conflict with what you desire. And if what you desire is to stay in bed and not do nothing and watch TV or go to the beach, if your desire for that is stronger than your knowledge that you should go, because that's a way in which you show God's lordship in your life, is giving Him the first morning of the first day of the week, and you do that, you're going to lose at some point out to your desires. Why? Because in your heart of hearts, hanging out with your friends at the beach is more valuable to you. And you'll start to resent going to church as something you have to pay, when you could be paying for something that you want. And God becomes just another bill in your life that you got to pay the man for, instead of buying what you really want with your time. Man, I'm preaching right now. And that's why you see folk come in the door and experience the power of God. And they're like, man, I want this life. I want this. I want this. But next Sunday, you don't see them anymore. Why? Because they gave mental attention to what they know is good. But Paul says here, the problem is not that I know what is good. I know what is good. That's not the problem. The problem is what I know to be good I don't do because it's at war with the desires in my heart. Man, this is, man, oh man. If you are experiencing inconsistency in your spiritual walk, you know what's happening in your life? You have a commitment to Christ, but you're not really sure if you have a desire for Christ. And if you do have a desire for Christ, you're not sure that it's bigger than the other desires that you have. This is the principle that sin uses to enslave you. See, whatever the object of this cycle of desire, fixation, desperation in your heart is what you're going to serve. Desire leads to a fixation. Whatever you desire, you're going to become fixated on. And whatever you're fixated on, that's what you become desperate for. James 1 puts it this way. James 1, 14 and 15. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. And these desires, everybody say desires, give birth to sinful actions. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. My desires that I don't allow to become fixated on God, that's the doorway by which now my sinful actions are born, and out of those sinful actions are death. If you're experiencing death in any area of your life, it's one of two things that are happening. Either you're ignorant. The Bible says without knowledge, people perish. In other words, you die anywhere that you lack the right knowledge, the right information. So if you are experiencing death in any area of your life, either it's because you're believing something that's not the truth, and the truth of God needs to come in and set you free from that, or you are harboring in that area desires that are not of God. And those desires are opening the door for you to follow other things, and then now that's giving birth to death in your life. So how did I begin to break the cycle of desiring sin in my life? And the thing about sin is sin doesn't just mean doing bad things. There's two words in the Bible for sin. One is the word porneia. Porneia is where we get the word pornography from. And pornography actually means to commit sin. That's what we think of, to commit evil. That's what we tend to equate sin to, doing evil. But actually, the main word for sin is not porneia. That's just one word. That's the conduct, the doing of sin, the commission of a sin. But the main word for sin is the word hamartia. And hamartia in the Greek means to miss the mark. It's like when you take a bow and arrow and you aim for a target and you miss it. You have missed the mark. And really the heart of sin is not the commission of evil. The heart of sin is us not being able to meet the mark. The reason why Jesus had to come and die for you isn't because you were doing bad things. The reason why Jesus had to come and die for you is because you were missing the mark of His holiness. And no matter how many good things you did and how many bad things you didn't do, it didn't matter because inside you were going to be unrighteous and you were always going to miss the mark. That's the heart of sin. So how do I break the cycle of missing the mark? How many of you feel like there are areas in your life where you are missing the mark when it comes to God? And when the Bible says that missing the mark is sin, that's an area that I have sinned in my life. How do I break the cycle of desiring the things that cause me to miss the mark? Well, I don't have a bunch of points for you on how to. It's just one simple thing. You can only swim against the current of a river so long. You're going to swim, and if you're the strongest swimmer in the world, if you're Michael Phelps, you can only swim against that current for so long. You are a limited commodity when it comes to energy and strength. And at some point, your strength will fail. And even if you're Michael Phelps and you can swim against the current longer than anybody else, at some point, the current will take over. As long as you swim against the current in your life, you will lose. And desire is a current. It is a rushing river. And as long as your desires are something you fight against, eventually you'll lose. So how do I break the cycle of desiring sin in my life? Desiring the things that cause me to sin, that cause me to miss the mark, that cause me to do the things I should not do? Well, it just simply is this. Philippians 2:13 says that God is at work in you both to will and to do His good pleasure. Not just to do the things that He wants you to do, but to want to do it. You know how you break the cycle of sin in your life and desiring sin? You start to desire God, because desiring God breaks the cycle of desiring sin in your life. And that's the problem with the human condition, is I can't teach you enough things to make you desire God. I can't lay my hands on you enough, and I can't give you enough altar calls to make you want to desire God. But someone this morning, something is awakening inside of you that is going to cause you to want to desire God. Something is awakening in you that says, I refuse to live one more day in my condition. I'm not going to do this any longer. I'm not going to live this cycle. I'm ready right now to choose you. See, that's really why Jesus came. He didn't just come so that you can be set free. The purpose of salvation is not just that you be set free, but that you can live free. Galatians 5:1 says this. This is how I'm going to close today. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty. Everyone say liberty. By which Christ has made us free. And do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Stand fast in the liberty by which Christ has made us free. Did you know that there's a difference between being free and liberty? Freedom and liberty are two different things. I know in America we equate the two. But actually, if you look it up, they mean completely different things. Let me get a volunteer up here. And let me get the worship team as well. I just need one person. Actually, let me get 5 people. Get 5 people. Let me get any 5 people. I'll take any 5 people. All right, Jeff, come on up. All right. Now, I want the 4 of you to create a box. Just create a square. You guys are 4 corners of a square. The 4 of you right here. Yeah. Spread out some. Sort of like a small jail cell would be. So come back here, Shay, and then come back here. Yep, line up with him. Okay, okay. Come back a little bit further. Now, Jeff, I want you to stand in the middle. Now, Jeff here is a man. He's a human being. And these 4 represent the walls of a cell, the corners of a cell. Like any jail cell you might experience. But unlike a regular jail cell with bars and doors and locks, this cell is much more powerful. This is the cell of your mind. And what Paul describes in Romans 7 is this cell. He says, I want to do what is good. I know what is God, but I feel trapped in a cell of my own making. The sin nature in me limits me, holds me, keeps me. And in Christianity, we really concentrate on freedom. And we say, man, the point of Jesus coming is freedom, but I can show you it's actually not. In fact, Galatians chapter 5 says freedom isn't the point. He said, stand fast, not in the freedom. Stand fast in the liberty that the freedom got you. Stand fast in the liberty by which Christ set you free. Freedom was the method, but liberty was the point. See, free means the state or the right to have freedom. The state or the right to have freedom. But liberty means the possession or experience of freedom. Now, I know you're looking and you're saying, I kind of see it, I don't see it, I don't know how it works, so let me break it down for you. Jeff is in jail. He's been convicted of a crime. All the evidence pointed at him being guilty. Now he's in a cell, and the point of a jail cell is to keep you in bondage. He is now a slave to the system. He's been declared guilty. All of a sudden, a new advocate comes along who has new evidence that exonerates him. The Bible says that Jesus is your advocate. Comes against the accuser of the brothers. That in your life, Jesus is not the prosecutor, Jesus is the defense attorney. And where the weight of the law was against Jeff, now he comes and he says, actually, I have DNA evidence that exonerates him. Because see, you based your conviction on faulty DNA, but I've got new DNA because see, Jeff doesn't have his own DNA anymore. He has my DNA. Wow. See. And because he has my DNA now, it renders null and void his conviction. He's free. The judge looks at that DNA and says, you're right. He's exonerated. And he pounds his gavel and he says, he's free. Let him go. Now, in the second, in the very instant, as soon as that gavel hit and that judge declared him free, he was free. He might still be in that cell. He might still be in the same conviction, the same place. But see, his state of being is no longer a prisoner. It's no longer a slave. He is a free man. And so they come over. And as a result of that judgment, they unlock the door. They open the door and say, Jeff, you're free. You can walk out. Now, that door is unlocked and open. There's nothing holding him in anymore. He is free. But if Jeff stays in that cell and doesn't move because of fear of what the outside world might hold, fear of messing up, fear of what it all means. Because see, some of us have been in this jail cell for so long, we have been accustomed to jail life. And now freedom has come, but we don't know how to adjust. We're scared of what it means to be out there. The responsibilities of freedom, all of the things. Now I'm going to be exposed to the world now. It was easy when I was here. Somebody just fed me. Somebody gave me, and I hated the fact I couldn't go anywhere, but it was easy living. What does it mean for me to go out? So Jeff decides to stay in here. You know what happens? Jeff might have his freedom because he's free. Nobody's holding him in here. He has freedom. He does not have liberty. Because liberty is where we get the word liberal from. Liberal means overflowing, without limits. He may have his freedom. He's not living life without limits. But the second Jeff goes, man, I'm free. I want to live in that freedom. I want to step outside of these cells. I'm going to knock my hands back and I'm going to yell out, I'm free. I want you to yell out, I'm free.
Free.
I want you to yell it out like you mean it.
I'm free.
Once he does that, guess what? He just stepped out of freedom into liberty. And now, he doesn't have to go by what a judge says. He can walk out and he can live it. He is free to do all the things that God has put in his heart to do. He is no longer bound. He is no longer a slave. And you know what would have kept them in there? Because I've helped people come out of jail. I'll tell you why they end up back in jail. It's not because they are really free. It's because they might be free out here, but they're still slaves in their mind to the fear. They're afraid. They don't know how to cope with coming back to real life. And so they go back. They choose the jail life again. That is because they are a slave to fear. And I don't know how many of you, thank you guys. I don't know how many of you are sitting here today and you are free in Christ, but you're still a slave to fear. And so you might have all the freedom of knowing Christ, but you are experiencing none of it because you are still succumbing to the same thoughts that have enslaved you for so long. I want you to stand up with me. Where you've been, what you've done, and what you have done to you. You are the quality of attorney that God knew you were going to be.